Welcome to the London Property Podcast, your go-to source for navigating the complex and ever-changing London real estate market. Our digital marketplace provides informative and educational content from industry leaders through podcasts and videos. We cover various aspects of the real estate experience, including buying and selling, finance, law, tax, construction, design, and more. Join us as we delve into the latest trends and developments in the market and gain valuable insights from our panel of experts.
Hello and welcome to London Property, the home of super prime. I am your host Farnaz Fazaipour, and today we're delighted to welcome to the show Anthony Payne, the co-founder of LonRes.
Thank you for having me, Farnaz.
So to those of us in the industry, LonRes needs no introduction, but do please tell us in a nutshell for our listeners about LonRes and what it does for the prime central London market.
Well, I like to think that LonRes has been the centrepiece of the central London market for 25 years, or nearly 25 years. We provide the most up-to-date data on what's going on in the central London market. People rely on us for not only data about what's on the market, but also properties that are being sold and rented. It's the most timely information that's available. Nothing is as quick or as accurate as the data that we provide. And it just means that everybody in the central London market is using extremely accurate data. And yeah, that's basically what we do.
Brilliant. Now, with that lens, what would you say have been the trends and the going-ons in the market over the last 12 months?
Well, I mean, I think obviously last year we probably still had a bit of an overhang from COVID. So I think there was a lot of activity going on in the market. And I think this year it's probably stabilised a little bit more. So I think that we can see in terms of the data that probably turnover down by about 3 to 5%, prices down by about 5%. But in recent times, stock levels on the system up about 12%.
So more people are getting willing to put their properties out there to shift?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely more stock coming on, in particular the 5 million plus market. There's been a lot more stock coming onto the system. And I think that, to my mind, I think that the cost of entry into the market today is high. And so I think people are much more reserved about plunging in. I think that basically they want to make the right decision about finding the right property. I think that we came out of COVID, it was very, very busy. People were falling over themselves to buy properties, not only in London, but outside London. And I think people are now being a bit more balanced. They want to find the right property at the right price. But there isn't a shortage of buyers. So we can see under offer levels are pretty stable, they're pretty good. So that gives you a little bbit of a picture into what's going on in advance, gives you a little bit of an insight. But the prices are not, they're not sort of frothing away. There isn't a bubble in the market. I think people are being quite reserved in their pricing.
So what's interesting is obviously you can see the kind of live data and the historic data, but I know that as a person you're very much in conversation with a lot of people in the industry. And if you were to summarize these conversations, is there a prediction that you would make on what you think we're looking at over the next 12 months?
Look, we don't. In all honesty, we're not fans of predicting. We don't. We leave that to others. So a lot of it, obviously, is anecdotal. I'm not necessarily looking at the research. Look, I think London is one of the centerpieces of the world economies. I think we do a lot of self-flagellation in the UK, and in particular in London. We look at all the negatives, but London is one of the main cities of the world, both in the financial sector and for many, many reasons. And I don't think that's going to change. It's got its problems. There's no question of that. So I personally think it's not going to be particularly exciting. I think that we will continue to have quite a balanced market. I think that probably you might actually see that prices will come off at the end of the year slightly. I mean, we're talking about maybe 1 or 2%. Equally, it could go up by 1 or 2%, but I think probably come the end of the year, we'll probably be looking at about 1 to 2% down. And I think, considering everything that's going on, I don't think that's too bad. So I think if I had to put a prediction, that's probably what I'd be looking at.
So what about the elections? What do you think the effects of the election are going to be on the housing market?
Well, I knew you were going to ask me this question, so I did have a quick look at it. I'll get the guys to have a look at the data. As it happens, elections don't have that much of an effect on prices. So people might hold back a little bit from putting their properties on the market just in the run-up. So you might have a little bit less property available just before an election, a little bit more post-election. Again, prices, it's a little bit less before, a little bit more after. So I think that it will just be, I think it will be the same. I think the only thing that probably could have a little bit of an outcome, I think we can all see probably what the outcome of the election is going to be. Labour are talking about putting an extra 1% on international buyers. And central London in particular is very, very reliant on the international buyer. So we'll have to see if that has an effect long term in terms of the market. Hopefully an extra 1% won't have too much of an effect, but it could have a little bit of an effect.
And again, back to your data, obviously you get a good view of this, but what do you think, what do you have to say about the rental market?
Well, I mean, the rental market has been it's been pretty amazing what's happened since COVID. I think that it's been a very, very challenging time for tenants. I think it's been a great time for landlords. Let's not forget that in the run-up to COVID, there hadn't been that much growth in the rental market. So whilst the growth that we've seen since the ending of sort of COVID restrictions has been runaway, if you actually were to take that over the last 6 or 7 years, it's not particularly outrageous. It is high since COVID, because you're talking about growth of 25 to 30% in prime central London, and that is obviously high. But if you were to take that back to 2017, it's not as outrageous. We're seeing obviously the market has settled down a little bit. We're not having that sort of growth. The growth is probably more in line with inflation now. Stock levels are still very, very low, but I think that they're normalising a little bit. And I think we're seeing more the north of the £1,000 a week market. We're seeing that market a little bit more stock coming on. And look, I think the market needs a little bit more stock, and I think the tenants need a little bit more choice. So it's moving in the right direction, but there's still a long way to go to get back to where we were pre-COVID. And
you don't think that this has got anything to do with the landlords also leaving the market?
Look, this is something that's talked about a lot, and I think there are arguments. There are people who say that lots of landlords are leaving, and there are lots of people who say there's no evidence that landlords leave. I don't believe, to my mind, that there is a sort of a landlords convention where they all say, look, taxes are terrible, let's all leave in one go. So obviously there isn't going to be some sort of huge exodus of landlords, but I think obviously there's been a drip of landlords leaving because the taxation policy has changed, and it's not as compelling a reason to be a landlord as it used to be. I don't actually think that the problem is so much to do with landlords leaving. I just think that it's probably more to do with higher numbers of people coming in and no new landlords coming into the market, in particular new developments. I think that not so many people are buying in the new developments and bringing those properties to the market. So I think it sort of creates a little bit of an imbalance. And so I think that that's probably more where the problem is.
And then finally, how about non-doms? Is there talk in the marketplace that they are leaving, they're reacting? I mean, how much of it is reality?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, look, anecdotally, and it's too early to tell, and much as I said a moment ago about there not being a landlords convention, I don't believe, and to my knowledge, there isn't a non-doms convention where they've all turned up at a church hall and said, this is getting ridiculous, let's all go. So anecdotally, there are people whose sort of instant reaction to it is, we're not going to stay. But I can tell you that the data doesn't show that there's some huge exodus in terms of people selling up and saying they want to leave. But equally, I don't think there's anything in the data to suggest that people aren't coming to London. And I think it's sort of demonstrated in some very, very large transactions which have taken place recently. And I think that if it was that bad, I just think that people wouldn't be here. But there are some fantastic buyers. I think there are lots of buyers in the market, at the top end of the market, who want to buy. Yes, I think some deals have fallen out of bed as a result of the non-dom changes. But I think that luckily there are plenty of buyers that are replacing them. So there's no shortage of buyers. Is it affecting some people? Most definitely. But I think that the market is steady as she goes.
And what would you say about transaction levels, let's say this year compared to previous years?
They're about 5% down. But I mean, I think, look, transactions are taking a lot longer. That could be for a combination of reasons, but transactions are definitely taking a lot longer. And there are less transactions taking place this year than there were last year. But you could argue that last year was probably quite a good year. So I think all in all, yes, transactions are down a bit. I think that people are just being much more measured in terms of their buying. And I think that, as I said earlier, I think that cost of entry is a bit of a barrier, because I think you can't afford to make a mistake. I think if you're buying a property, you have to be sure that you want this property for the long term. Stamp duty is very high, build costs are very, very high. So I think that if you make a mistake, it could be very costly. And so I think people are just taking their time to find the right property. So not a lack of buyers, it's just people trying to find the right property.
And is there a price range that you're seeing more activity in?
Well, as it happens, I think it's strange enough, well, not strangely, but I mean, over the last 12 months, I think that the higher end of the market, so let's say the £5 million plus market, has actually fared very, very well. It's the lower end of the market in central London that probably hasn't fared as well. But again, I think as you move out into the outer regions, at the moment, I think that the lower end of the market is looking pretty good. I was talking to an agent this morning who was actually saying to me that he felt that that sort of price range up to maybe 1.5, people were just keen to get on with their lives. They just wanted to do it. I think the people at the very top end, they just want to be sure. Let's look at what's happening politically. Let's have a look at the costs. So I think that end probably just slightly slowing down a little bit. Bottom end probably a little bit busier.
Okay, brilliant. Well, it was really good having you on the show, and I hope it will be the first of many.
Maybe.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Nice seeing you.
Thanks for tuning in to our latest episode of the London Property Podcast. Head over to our website where you can browse our exclusive network of top experts driving the market. As a member, you'll have direct access to our experts and their networks. Our award-winning content will help you choose the right professionals for your needs and make informed decisions about your investments. Personal recommendations are a powerful tool in connecting with trusted professionals. Let us introduce you to the right people to help you achieve your real estate goals. Contact us now to learn more about becoming a member and gaining access to these valuable resources, or joining our directory of experts.